When her husband casually said, "My friends think you're not remarkable enough for me, I could do better," she simply replied, "Then go find better." That same day, she quietly cancelled their plans, the gifts, everything. 2 weeks later at 4 in the morning, his closest friend called her in tears. "Please answer. Something happened tonight and it's about you." Misty Rivera stared at her phone, watching it vibrate against the hotel nightstand. She had checked into this room 6 hours ago using cash, telling no one where she was going. The number flashing on the screen belonged to Derek Chen, Michael's best friend since college. She almost declined the call. Almost. "What do you want, Derek?" His voice came through broken, slurred with alcohol and something darker, guilt that had finally found its voice. "Misty, I can't do this anymore. I can't sleep. I can't look at myself. You need to know the truth about that night." She sat up, pulling the hotel comforter around her shoulders. Outside, the city was still dark. Quiet in that particular way it only gets in the hours before dawn. "What night?" 2 weeks ago. The bar. When Michael said those things about you. Derek's breathing was ragged. "We were all there. Me, Jason, Marcus from his office, 2 other guys from his gym. We'd been drinking for hours, and Michael started talking about you." Misty's hand tightened on the phone. "He said you were getting too comfortable, said you'd stop trying to impress him. And Jason made a joke. He said, 'How long before she realizes you're out of her league?' And we all laughed." Derek's voice cracked. Then Marcus said, "I give it 6 months before she's gone." And Jason said, "A year, tops." The room felt colder. Misty pulled the comforter tighter. "We made a bet, Misty, right there at the bar. We bet on when you'd leave him. I put down $500 on 6 months. Jason bet a year. Marcus bet you'd never leave." Derek was crying now. "And Michael? God, Misty." Michael laughed. He said, "She'll never leave. She needs me more than I need her. Where else would she go?" Something inside Misty's chest turned to ice. Then he drank his whiskey and said, "Besides, my friends think I could do better. Maybe I should test that theory." And we all laughed again. We laughed like your marriage was a joke, like you were a joke. Derek's voice dropped to a whisper. "I went home that night and couldn't sleep. And every night since, I see your face when he said those words to you, the way you just stood there, so calm, so dignified. And I realized, you already knew, didn't you? You already knew he didn't value you." Misty said nothing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than all of us, and I can't carry this anymore. You had to know the truth." She hung up without responding. For 10 minutes she sat in the dark hotel room, perfectly still. Then she opened her laptop. By the time the sun rose, Misty had made 37 phone calls, sent 62 emails, and activated a network she had been building for 8 years. Quietly, carefully, while everyone thought she was just Michael Nichols' supportive wife. She called her father first. "Daddy, I need you to pull your recommendation from the Garrison Investment Group. Yes, I know Michael's company depends on it. That's exactly why I'm calling." Then she called her college roommate who ran the largest distribution network in the state. "Remember those preferential rates you've been giving Michael's company? As a favor to me, I need you to revise them to standard market pricing immediately." One by one, she dismantled the invisible architecture that had made Michael Nichols successful. Not by sabotage, simply by withdrawing her support. She packed her belongings methodically, only what was truly hers. Clothes she'd bought with her own money, jewelry from her family, the laptop she'd purchased before their marriage. Everything Michael had given her stayed behind. She wouldn't take anything that would let him claim she was vindictive. At 7 in the morning, she placed her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Beside it, she left a note written in her elegant handwriting. "You were right. Go find someone more remarkable." Then she walked out of their luxury apartment and disappeared. Michael came home at noon, hungover and carrying apology flowers. He'd spent the morning at brunch with those same friends, laughing about how dramatic women could be. Give her a few days, Jason had advised. She'll cool off. They always do. The empty apartment confused him at first. Maybe she'd gone to her sister's place. Women needed space after arguments. That was normal. He called her phone, disconnected. He called her sister. I have no idea where Misty is, Jade said, her voice cold. But if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Come on, Jade. Don't be dramatic. We had a little fight. She'll come around. A little fight? Jade's voice rose. You told her she wasn't remarkable enough for you. You told her you could do better. What exactly did you expect her to do, thank you? I was just being honest. My friends think... Your friends are idiots, Michael. And so are you. She hung up. He tried her father's office. The receptionist's voice was professionally polite. Mr. Rivera is not taking your calls. This is his son-in-law. I need to speak with him about Misty. Mr. Rivera was very clear. He is not taking your calls. Have a good day, Mr. Nichols. Michael stood in the empty apartment, flowers still in his hand, and felt the first tremor of real concern. This wasn't like Misty. She was calm, rational, reasonable. She didn't disappear. She communicated. His phone rang. His business partner, Tom. Michael, where the hell have you been? Garrison Investment Group just called. They're pulling their funding. All of it. They want out of our deal. What? Why? They said they need to reevaluate their position. Something about concerns over company stability. Michael, that's $3 million. We need that funding. The expansion depends on it. I'll call them. I'll fix this. You better. Because if they pull out, the others will follow. That's how this works. Michael tried to call Henry Garrison. The man had been at his wedding, for God's sake. They went to the same country club. Henry's assistant answered, Mr. Garrison is not available. Tell him it's Michael Nichols. It's urgent. A pause. Then Henry's voice, but colder than Michael had ever heard it. Michael, I'm going to be direct. My investment in your company was a favor to Rivera Industries, specifically to Mr. Rivera's daughter. She called me this morning and asked me to reconsider, so I'm reconsidering. Henry, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Business is business, and my business relationship was with Misty, not you. Good luck, Michael. The line went dead. Over the next 6 days, Michael watched his world systematically dismantle itself. 3 more investors called with concerns. His primary supplier tripled their rates overnight. His biggest client didn't return calls. And through it all, Misty was a ghost. No one knew where she was. No one would talk to him. Her family had closed ranks so completely, it was like he'd never been part of it. On the 7th morning, he found legal papers slipped under his apartment door. Divorce petition, filed by Misty Rivera. Irreconcilable differences. Attached was a second document that made his blood run cold, a detailed record of every business contact Misty had introduced him to, every deal she'd helped facilitate, every idea she'd contributed that he'd presented as his own. Each entry was time-stamped, documented, cross-referenced. The final page contained a single paragraph. The above documentation demonstrates that Nichols Consulting was built substantially on connections, credibility, and intellectual property contributed by Misty Rivera. This documentation is provided for informational purposes. Mrs. Rivera makes no financial claims against the company and seeks no compensation for her contributions. She simply wishes to clarify the record. As of today, she is formally withdrawing her support and launching Rivera Consulting Group. Mrs. Rivera wishes Mr. Nichols well in his future endeavors. Beneath it, her signature, elegant, final, devastating. Michael's phone rang. Another investor, another withdrawal, another crack in the foundation. He looked around his empty apartment and finally understood what he'd done. He hadn't just lost an argument with his wife. He'd bet against the only person who'd ever believed he was remarkable, and she'd called his bluff. Chapter 2. The Invisible Architect. 7 days after Misty Rivera walked out, Michael Nichols learned that his entire life had been built on a foundation he never knew existed, and she had just removed every stone. The week unfolded like a masterclass in destruction through absence. Misty didn't sabotage him. She didn't spread rumors or badmouth his company. She simply stopped being the invisible force that had made him successful, and the structure collapsed like it was always meant to. Monday morning, his supplier called. "Michael, we need to discuss your account. We're adjusting your rates to reflect standard market pricing." "What? We've had our current rate for 3 years." "That rate was a courtesy extended based on your relationship with Rivera Industries. That relationship no longer exists. The new rate is effective immediately." The increase was 200%. Tuesday, his second-largest client sent a formal letter ending their contract at the next renewal period. When Michael called to ask why, the CEO was blunt. "Your wife facilitated our introduction. She also provided consulting on that initial deal, unpaid, as a favor to you. Now that she's no longer involved, we've decided to explore other options. But the work we've done has been adequate. But Michael, let's be honest, Misty was the secret weapon. We knew it. You apparently didn't." Wednesday brought an email from the Waverley Foundation, cancelling their contract immediately. No explanation, just cancellation. Michael called his contact there, a woman named Helen who'd always been friendly. "Helen, what happened? Did we do something wrong?" Her voice was sympathetic but firm. "Michael, do you remember how we met? At the charity gala 3 years ago. Do you remember who introduced us?" Silence. "It was Misty," Helen said gently. "She'd been on our board for 2 years before that. She specifically arranged for me to meet you because she believed you could help us. Every quarterly review, she'd check in with me privately to make sure you were meeting our needs. She was your quality control, your relationship manager, your advocate, and frankly, without her oversight, we've noticed the work has been slipping." "Slipping? How?" "You missed the last 2 deadlines. Your reports used to be thorough, now they're bare minimum. Michael, I think Misty was doing more of the work than you realized, or wanted to admit." The call ended. Michael sat at his desk, a sick feeling spreading through his stomach. Thursday, he received a formal letter from his bank. They were reviewing his company's loans and needed additional documentation regarding projected revenue. The tone was professional, but carried an unmistakable warning. "Prove you're still viable, or we'll call in your debt." Friday morning, Michael's business partner Tom walked into his office and closed the door. "We need to talk." Tom was 10 years older, a steady presence who'd helped Michael launch the company. He looked exhausted. "I've been doing some digging," Tom said, "trying to understand why everything's falling apart at once. Michael, did you know Misty had relationships with every single one of our major clients before you even met them?" "That's not true." "It is true. I pulled the records. Garrison Investment, her father sits on their advisory board. Waverley Foundation, she was on their board before you two even married. Sterling Tech, her college roommate is their VP of operations. Every major client we came through her network." Michael's jaw tightened. "I built relationships with those people." "You maintained relationships Misty created. There's a difference." Tom leaned forward. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you understand what we're up against. Misty wasn't just your wife. She was our entire business development strategy, and we never credited her. We never paid her. Hell, we never even thanked her. She never asked for credit. Maybe she shouldn't have had to ask." Tom stood. "I've got 3 calls scheduled today with potential new clients. All of them have asked if we're affiliated with Misty Rivera's new firm. When I say no, they lose interest. She's launching Rivera Consulting Group, and the entire industry is watching. Meanwhile, we're hemorrhaging clients and money." After Tom left, Michael did something he'd been avoiding. He searched online for Rivera Consulting Group. The website was elegant, professional, already polished, featured prominently Misty Rivera, founder and CEO, former silent partner in multiple successful ventures, now building her own legacy of ethical, results-driven consulting. Silent partner. The words stung because they were accurate. The site listed her credentials, degrees he'd watched her earn while supporting his career, certifications she'd completed during weekends he spent golfing with clients, awards she'd won that he'd barely acknowledged. And her client list, 3 major corporations had already signed on. The press release was dated 3 days ago. She'd been planning this. While he was telling his friends she needed him, she was building an exit strategy that would prove exactly how little he'd actually contributed to his own success. Michael tried calling mutual friends. Most didn't answer. The ones who did were cool, distant. "Look, Michael," one finally said, "we all knew. Everyone knew Misty was the brains behind your operation. You were the front man, and that was fine when you treated her well. But what you said to her, what your friends said, that got around. People talk, and in this industry, reputation matters. Right now you look like a man who took his wife's work, took credit for it, then publicly humiliated her. That's not a good look." He tried her family again. Her father's assistant was colder this time. "Mr. Rivera has asked me to inform you that any further attempts to contact him or his family will be considered harassment." Her sister Jade sent him a text. "She gave you everything. You gave her contempt. Stay away from her." By Friday evening, Michael sat alone in his apartment, the one that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too expensive for a man whose income was evaporating. He ordered takeout because he didn't know how to cook the meals Misty used to prepare. He scrolled through old photos on his phone, seeing her smile in images from company parties, award ceremonies, client dinners. In every photo from every success, she was there. Sometimes in the frame, often just at the edge, sometimes cut off entirely, always present, never centered, never credited. He found a video from his biggest contract signing 2 years ago. In it, he's shaking hands with the client, grinning at the camera. Behind him, barely visible, Misty is talking to the client's wife. He'd never noticed before, but now he could read her lips in the video. "He's brilliant at implementation. I know he'll take care of you." She'd been selling him, to everyone. While he'd been taking the applause, she'd been backstage making sure he deserved it. His phone buzzed, an email from an attorney he didn't recognize. The subject line, "Regarding Rivera vs. Nichols." The email was brief. "Mrs. Rivera wishes to expedite the divorce proceedings. She is requesting no alimony, no division of business assets, and no financial settlement. She is taking only her personal property and wishes to finalize all legal matters within 60 days. She asks that you not contact her directly. All communication should go through this office." She was making it easy for him, even now, even after everything. Or maybe she just wanted him gone from her life as quickly as possible. Michael opened his laptop and began composing an email to her. He wrote for an hour, deleting and rewriting, trying to find words that could somehow explain, apologize, fix this. Finally, he sent it to the address on her new company website. It bounced back within minutes. "This email address does not accept messages from your domain." She'd blocked him, completely, professionally, permanently. Michael looked around his empty apartment and felt the full weight of what he'd lost. Not just a wife, not just a partner, but the person who'd made him possible in the first place. His phone rang. "Tom, we got the bank letter. They want full repayment within 6 months or they're seizing our assets. Michael, without new revenue, we can't make that deadline. We're looking at bankruptcy." Michael closed his eyes. "What do we do?" "I don't know, but whatever we do, we need to do it fast, because in 6 months we're either going to find a miracle or we're going to lose everything you built." Tom didn't say what both of them were thinking. Everything Misty built, everything Michael had just been borrowing. And now the bill was due. Chapter 3. The Empire Rises. 3 weeks after Misty Rivera left, the city's business community watched her rise like she'd been waiting in the wings all along, because she had been. Michael saw the article first thing that morning. His assistant had left it on his desk. The business magazine opened to page 14. The headline read, "The woman who built him, now building her own empire." The photo showed Misty in a sharp charcoal suit, standing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows with the city skyline behind her. She looked powerful, confident, and utterly at peace. The expression on her face was one Michael had never seen during their marriage: pride without apology. He read the article with growing dread. For years, industry insiders whispered about the secret behind Michael Nichols' meteoric rise in corporate consulting. The answer, it turns out, was standing beside him at every awards ceremony, his now ex-wife, Misty Rivera. She was the architect, says Thomas Waverley, CEO of Waverley Foundation. Michael was the face, but Misty designed the strategies, maintained the relationships, and ensured quality control. We're thrilled she's finally getting the recognition she deserves. Rivera's new firm, Rivera Consulting Group, has already signed 5 major clients in 3 weeks. An unprecedented launch that has industry veterans taking notice. Her approach? Ethical consulting that prioritizes long-term relationships over short-term profits. I learned what not to do, Rivera says when asked about her previous experience. She doesn't mention her ex-husband by name, but the implication is clear. I watched someone build success on borrowed credibility. I'm building mine on trust, transparency, and results. When asked about her sudden visibility after years in the background, Rivera's answer is simple. I wasn't ready before. I am now. The article continued for 3 more pages, detailing her credentials, her vision, her already impressive client roster. It mentioned her recent divorce only in passing, focusing instead on her business acumen and fresh approach to corporate consulting. Michael's phone rang before he finished reading. Tom, have you seen it? I'm looking at it now. She just stole our last 2 potential clients. They called this morning to cancel their meetings with us. Both signed with Rivera Consulting yesterday. Michael set the magazine down carefully, like it might explode. How many clients do we have left? 3. Down from 12 3 weeks ago. Michael, we're dying, and she's thriving. That evening, Michael attended an industry mixer at the Grandview Hotel. He almost didn't go. The thought of facing colleagues who'd seen that article made his stomach turn, but hiding wouldn't save his company. He walked into the ballroom trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Conversations stopped as he passed. People who used to greet him warmly now nodded politely and looked away. Then he saw her. Misty stood near the bar, surrounded by at least 15 people, executives, investors, entrepreneurs. They were leaning in as she spoke, laughing at something she'd said, treating her like she was the most important person in the room. Because she was. She wore a deep blue dress that he'd never seen before. Her hair was different, shorter, more modern. She looked like a different person. No, that wasn't right. She looked like herself, maybe for the first time. Michael watched a man approach her. Richard Sterling, CEO of Sterling Tech, one of Michael's former clients. Richard kissed Misty's cheek like they were old friends. They probably were. Michael had just never noticed. He caught fragments of their conversation from across the room. The proposal you sent was brilliant, Richard was saying. Exactly what we needed. I can't believe we didn't work with you directly years ago. Misty's laugh was warm. You were working with me, just indirectly. Well, now we're fixing that mistake. I'll have my team send over the contracts tomorrow. Michael's chest tightened. Sterling Tech had been his client. He'd cultivated that relationship for 3 years. Except he hadn't. Misty had. He started walking toward her without thinking. He made it halfway across the room before her eyes met his. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in her expression. Recognition, maybe pain. Then it was gone, replaced by polite indifference. She turned back to her conversation like he wasn't there. Michael stopped walking, stood there in the middle of the ballroom like an idiot while people moved around him. Someone bumped his shoulder. He heard a whispered, "That's him," and suppressed laughter. He retreated to the bar and ordered whiskey. From that vantage point, he watched Misty work the room. She moved with easy confidence, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, making connections look effortless. This was what she'd been doing for him, he realized. All those dinners and galas and networking events where he'd been the center of attention. She'd been doing this, building relationships, creating opportunities, opening doors. He'd just been walking through them. Quite something, isn't she? Michael turned. Jason, one of his friends from that night at the bar, stood beside him. What are you doing here? Michael asked. Same thing as everyone else, hoping to do business with Rivera Consulting. Jason signaled for a drink. Look, man, I feel bad about what happened. That bet thing was messed up, but business is business. And right now, Misty Rivera is the hottest name in the industry. You're going to work with her? After everything? After everything? Jason's expression hardened. After you humiliated your wife in public? After you took credit for her work for years? Yeah, Michael, I'm going to work with her. Because she's professional enough to separate business from personal. And because she's actually good at what she does. I'm good at what I do. Jason looked at him with something like pity. Were you, though? Or were you just good at being married to her? He walked away, leaving Michael alone at the bar. The evening crawled by. Michael tried networking, tried making connections, but every conversation felt hollow. People were polite but distant. When he mentioned his company, eyes glazed over. When someone mentioned Rivera Consulting, those same eyes lit up with interest. He left early, unable to watch anymore. In his car, he sat in the parking garage and pulled up Misty's company website on his phone. She'd added video testimonials, client after client praising her insight, her integrity, her results. One CEO said, Misty Rivera doesn't just solve problems, she anticipates them. She's 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Working with her has been transformative for our company. Michael had heard similar praise before about his company, but watching these testimonials, he realized they'd never really been about him at all. His phone buzzed. An email from Tom. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. The bank is accelerating our loan repayment timeline. They want proof of revenue stabilization within 2 weeks, or they're calling everything due immediately. We need to talk about bankruptcy options. Michael drove home through empty streets, his company dying, his reputation in ruins, his wife gone. He passed a billboard advertising some tech startup. The slogan read, "Build something that lasts." He'd thought he had. Turned out he'd just been renting someone else's foundation, and now the landlord wanted her property back. When he finally crawled into bed, the bed that still smelled faintly of her perfume even after 3 weeks, his phone lit up with a notification. A news alert. Rivera Consulting Group announces major partnership with Garrison Investment Group. Garrison, the investor who'd pulled funding from Michael's company on Misty's request. Now they were partnering with her directly. The article included a quote from Henry Garrison. Ms. Rivera represents the kind of ethical, results-driven leadership we want to invest in. We're excited about this partnership's potential. Michael turned off his phone and stared at the ceiling. She wasn't just succeeding without him. She was succeeding because of what she'd learned from being tied to him. Every mistake he'd made, every shortcut he'd taken, every person he'd undervalued, she'd watched it all. And now she was building something better, something real, something that didn't need him at all. And the worst part? She deserved every bit of it. He'd told his friends he could do better. Turned out so could she. She just had to get rid of him first. Chapter 4. The Mirror Cracks. 2 months after Misty left, Michael's reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a stranger, hollow-eyed, thinner, wearing the face of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. The phone calls from creditors started at 7 in the morning now. They'd learned his patterns, knew he was likely to answer before coffee, before his defenses were up. This morning it was the bank, the 3rd call this week. Mr. Nichols, we need to discuss your repayment strategy. He didn't have one. Tom had suggested bankruptcy last week. Michael had refused, clinging to the delusion that something would change, that some miracle client would appear and save them. But miracles required faith. And everyone's faith had walked out when Misty did. His phone buzzed with a text. Derek, the friend who'd confessed about the bet, who'd broken the silence at 4 in the morning 8 weeks ago. Man, I need to talk to you about something. Michael called him back. What is it? Derek's voice was uncomfortable. I've been working with Rivera Consulting on a project for my company. She's really good, Michael, like scary good. We're seeing results we never got from your firm. You're calling to tell me my ex-wife is good at her job? No, I'm calling because she asked about you yesterday. Michael's chest tightened. What did she ask? She wanted to know if you were okay, not business-wise, personally. If you were eating, sleeping, if you had people around you. Derek paused. I told her you were fine, but Michael, you're not fine. Everyone can see it. What did she say? She nodded. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said, he's going to have to break completely before he can rebuild. I hope he survives it. Then she went back to work, like we'd been discussing the weather. Michael hung up and threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall but didn't break. Nothing broke cleanly anymore. That afternoon his mother called. The conversation was brief and devastating. I had lunch with Misty yesterday. Michael's stomach dropped. What? She reached out a few weeks ago. Said she wanted to maintain our relationship regardless of what happened between you two. We've been meeting for lunch every Thursday. His mother's voice was gentle but firm. Michael, she asked about you. She wanted to make sure I was still in your life, that you had support. She left me. She destroyed my business. She removed her support from a business built on her connections. That's not destruction, that's extraction. His mother sighed. Do you know what she told me yesterday? She said, I still love him, I probably always will, but I can't save someone who doesn't think he needs saving. I don't need her to save me. Don't you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're drowning, and you're too proud to grab the life preserver. She's the one who pushed me in. No, baby. You jumped in yourself the moment you told her she wasn't remarkable enough. His mother's voice cracked. That woman loved you with everything she had. She sacrificed her own career, her own ambitions to build you up. And you thanked her by humiliating her in front of people who were betting on your marriage failing. Michael said nothing. I'm your mother. I will always love you. But right now, I don't like you very much. And until you look in the mirror and admit what you did, you're going to keep losing everyone who matters. She hung up. Michael sat in his empty office. They'd had to let go of 3 more employees last week and felt something inside him begin to crack. That evening, he did something pathetic. He drove past Misty's new office building. It was a sleek high-rise downtown, the kind of place that screamed success. He parked across the street and watched. At 8 p.m., lights were still on in her office. He could see her silhouette through the windows, moving around, working late like she always had. But back then, she'd been working on his projects. Now she was building her own empire. A man joined her in the office. Tall, well-dressed, confident. They stood close while looking at something on her computer. The man laughed. Misty smiled. That smile Michael remembered. The one that used to be for him. The man touched her shoulder. She didn't pull away. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They left the building together 20 minutes later. The man held the door for her, said something that made her laugh. They walked to separate cars, but before getting in hers, Misty touched the man's arm briefly. A gesture of warmth, of connection. Michael sat in his car until they'd both driven away, feeling something ugly and desperate claw at his chest. Jealousy, regret, recognition of what he'd thrown away. He drove home through streets that all looked the same now. At a red light, he pulled up her website again. A compulsion he'd developed, checking multiple times a day to see what she was accomplishing without him. She'd added a new section. Our philosophy. He read it in the red glow of the traffic light. Rivera Consulting believes every person has value. Every contribution matters. Success isn't about one person taking credit. It's about teams working together with mutual respect. We don't build empires on borrowed credibility. We build them on trust, earned daily. Every word was aimed at him. Every principle was a rejection of everything he'd done. The light turned green. Someone honked behind him. He drove forward, but his hands were shaking. At home, he opened his laptop and did what he'd been avoiding for 2 months. He went through old files, old emails, old documents from his company's history. In every major deal, he found her fingerprints. an introduction she'd made, a strategy she'd suggested, a problem she'd solved, edits to his proposals in her handwriting, late-night emails from her with subject lines like "Thoughts on the Waverley pitch" and revised numbers for sterling contract. He'd filed them all away, used her ideas, presented them as his own, and she'd never said a word. He found a video file buried in old folders, their wedding reception. He clicked play without thinking. There she was, young and radiant in her wedding dress, dancing with her father. The camera caught their conversation. "You sure about this one, sweetheart?" her father asked. "I love him, Daddy, and I see his potential. I really think I can help him build something amazing. Just make sure he appreciates what you're giving up for him. Your own career, your own path." Misty had smiled at her father with total confidence. "He does. He tells me all the time how much he needs me." The camera panned away. Michael paused the video on her face, so full of love, so full of hope, so full of belief in him. He'd taken that belief and treated it like it was worthless. His phone rang. Jason, the friend from the bar, from the bet, from that night 2 months ago that had destroyed everything. "Don't hang up, just listen. I ran into Misty at a conference today. She asked how you were doing." "Why does everyone keep telling me she's asking about me?" "Because it's strange, man. She built this empire. She's the hottest name in the industry, and she still asks about you. Every person we have in common, she casually asks if they've seen you, if you're okay." So either she still cares, which makes what you did even worse, or she's keeping tabs on you for some reason we don't understand yet. Jason paused. "I asked her directly. I said, 'Why do you care how he's doing?' You know what she said?" "What?" She said, "Because I spent 8 years loving him. That doesn't just disappear. I can hate what he did and still hope he figures out how to be the man I thought he was." Jason let that sink in. "She's not your enemy, Michael. She's the person you destroyed. There's a difference." After Jason hung up, Michael sat in the dark apartment and finally let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. Not what he'd lost, what he'd destroyed. He'd taken a woman who loved him, who believed in him, who sacrificed her own ambitions to build his, and he'd told her she wasn't remarkable enough. He'd made her feel small so he could feel big, and now she was enormous, and he was disappearing. His phone buzzed. An email from a potential client he'd been courting for weeks. "Mr. Nichols, thank you for your proposal. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with Rivera Consulting Group. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Michael closed his laptop, picked up a pen, started writing. "Dear Misty, I know you won't read this. I know it won't change anything. But I need to say it anyway. You were remarkable. You are remarkable, and I was too small to see it. I'm sorry." He addressed an envelope to her office, drove to the post office at midnight, mailed it. It came back a week later, unopened, stamped "Return to Sender." Even his apologies weren't worth her time anymore. And maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe some things once broken should stay broken. Maybe he deserved to watch her thrive while he drowned in the consequences of his own cruelty. Maybe this was justice, and maybe justice hurt more than anything else. Chapter 5. The Replacement. 4 months after Misty walked out, Michael received an invitation that felt like a punishment designed specifically for him. The Industry Excellence Gala at the Fitzgerald Hotel, where Misty Rivera would receive Entrepreneur of the Quarter. He almost threw the invitation away. Then he saw the note paperclipped to it. "You should come. See what excellence actually looks like. Tom." His business partner had started making comments like that lately, bitter little reminders that Michael had destroyed more than his marriage. The gala was tonight. Michael stood in his closet looking at suits he couldn't afford to dry clean anymore. He chose the navy one, the one Misty had always said made him look distinguished. That felt appropriate somehow, wearing her compliment to watch her be celebrated without him. The Fitzgerald ballroom glittered with the city's business elite. Michael arrived late, slipping in as dinner was being served. He'd timed it deliberately, Fewer chances for awkward conversations if people were already seated. Then he saw her. Misty stood near the head table, luminous in an emerald dress that caught the light every time she moved. But it wasn't the dress that made Michael's breath catch. It was her face. She was laughing, genuinely, freely, the way she used to laugh with him before he'd made her feel small. And she wasn't alone. The man beside her was tall, distinguished, maybe 45, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit, the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He had his hand on the small of her back, not possessive, just comfortable. Familiar. Michael watched the man lean down and whisper something in Misty's ear. She turned her face toward him, smiling, and said something back. The intimacy of the gesture was a knife between Michael's ribs. "That's Alexander Bennett," a voice said beside him. Michael turned. Helen from the Waverley Foundation stood there, champagne in hand. "CEO of Bennett Strategic Consulting," she continued, "one of the most respected names in the industry. Word is, he's been mentoring Misty, helping her navigate the business world as a solo entrepreneur." Helen paused meaningfully, "Though some people think it's becoming more than mentorship." Michael's jaw tightened. "Good for her." "Is it?" Helen studied him. "Because you look like someone just punched you." "I'm fine." "You're not." "And Michael?" Helen's voice softened. "You don't get to be not fine. You ended this marriage. You humiliated her. Whatever she does now, whoever she does it with, you lost the right to have opinions about it." She walked away, leaving Michael standing alone at the edge of the ballroom. The master of ceremonies called everyone to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this quarter's recipient of the Industry Excellence Award, Ms. Misty Rivera." The room erupted in applause. Misty walked to the stage with Alexander Bennett right beside her. He held her hand as she climbed the stairs, steadying her, supporting her, the way Michael should have done for 8 years. Misty accepted the Crystal Award and stepped to the microphone. Michael had heard her speak before, at charity events and company functions, but always in the background, always introducing someone else, never center stage. Now she owned it. "4 months ago, I made a difficult decision," she began. "I walked away from a situation where I was undervalued, unappreciated, and diminished. Some people thought I was crazy, some thought I was vindictive, but I knew something they didn't. I knew what I was capable of when I stopped making myself smaller to fit someone else's ego." The audience laughed appreciatively. Michael felt every eye in the room dart toward him briefly before returning to her. Rivera Consulting Group was built on a simple principle. Every person has value. Every contribution matters. Success isn't about one person taking credit. It's about recognizing that we rise together or we fall alone. She paused, her voice strengthening. "I spent years helping someone else rise. Now I'm rising on my own terms, and I'm bringing people up with me." The applause was thunderous. "I want to thank my team, my clients, and my family for believing in me. And I especially want to thank Alexander Bennett, whose guidance, partnership, and friendship have been invaluable during this transition." Alexander stood and raised his glass to her. The gesture was elegant, supportive, and the room saw exactly what Michael did. This wasn't just a business relationship. The way Bennett looked at her, the way she smiled at him, the easy intimacy between them. Someone had replaced him, someone better. After the speeches, people crowded around Misty to congratulate her. Michael stayed at his table, nursing whiskey he couldn't taste, watching her shine. He saw Tom approach her. They spoke briefly, Misty smiling warmly at his former business partner. Tom gestured toward Michael's table. Misty's smile didn't falter, but she shook her head. Tom nodded and walked away. An hour passed. Michael was about to leave when he felt someone slide into the seat beside him. "Hello, Michael." His heart stopped. He turned. Misty sat there, still radiant, still powerful, but up close he could see the wariness in her eyes. She'd approached him, but she'd armed herself with distance first. "Misty," Congratulations. The award. You deserve it. Thank you. She studied him with those dark eyes that used to look at him with love. Now they held something else. Curiosity, maybe. Assessment. You look terrible. I feel worse. Good. No venom in her voice. Just honesty. You should feel terrible. What you did was terrible. I know. They sat in silence while the party continued around them. Finally, Misty spoke. Why did you come tonight? Tom sent me the invitation. Said I should see what excellence looks like. And? Do you see it? Michael looked at her. Really looked at her. The confidence, the power, the absolute certainty in who she was. Yes, I see it. I always saw it, Misty. I was just too threatened by it to admit it. Something flickered in her expression. Not forgiveness, recognition. Alexander is waiting for me, she said, standing. We're going to dinner after this. Are you two dating? She considered the question. I don't know yet. He treats me with respect. He values my opinions. He celebrates my success instead of feeling threatened by it. So maybe. Each word was a blade. He seems like a good man. He is. He's everything you should have been. She picked up her clutch. Good night, Michael. Thank you for coming. I know it must have been hard. She walked away, and Michael watched Alexander Bennett wrap an arm around her waist, guiding her toward the exit. She leaned into him slightly, a gesture of trust, of comfort. The man turned back briefly, meeting Michael's eyes across the room. No hostility there, just acknowledgement. One man recognizing another. The better man had won. Michael left the gala and drove aimlessly through the city. He ended up parked outside the apartment building he used to share with Misty. Their old apartment was on the 15th floor, third window from the left. The lights were off. Someone else lived there now. His phone buzzed. An email from his bank. Final notice. Payment of outstanding balance required within 30 days or foreclosure proceedings will begin. 30 days to save a company that was already dead. 30 days to find money he didn't have. 30 days to fix something that had been broken the moment he'd told his wife she wasn't remarkable enough. His phone rang. Tom, I just left the gala. Michael, I have to tell you something and you're not going to like it. What? Misty made me an offer tonight. She wants to acquire our client list, our remaining contracts, and our staff. She'll honor their salaries and give them better benefits. She'll pay off our business debts and give us both a fair settlement. Michael's stomach dropped. What about our company? It becomes part of Rivera Consulting Group. The Nichols name disappears. Michael, this might be our only option. If we don't take this deal, we're looking at bankruptcy and our people lose everything. She's buying us out. She's saving our employees from going down with a sinking ship. She's being more generous than she has any right to be, considering what you did to her. Tom's voice was tired. I'm recommending we take the deal. I'll be voting yes. The question is, will you? She's taking everything. No, you lost everything. She's just picking up the pieces and making sure innocent people don't get hurt by your mistakes. Michael hung up and sat in his car outside the empty apartment, watching the dark window where his life used to be. She hadn't just replaced him, she'd erased him, and the worst part, she'd done it with grace, professionalism, and genuine care for the people he'd been about to drag down with him. She'd become everything he'd pretended to be. And she'd found someone who recognized her worth, while he sat alone in a car he couldn't afford to keep, watching the ghost of a life he'd destroyed with his own hands. Justice, he was learning, wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just this, watching someone you hurt become everything they were meant to be, without you. Chapter 6. The Fall. 6 months after Misty left, Michael Nichols signed the papers that made his company disappear and watched his former employees celebrate their rescue. The conference room at Rivera Consulting Group was 3 times the size of his old office, all glass and chrome, and the kind of elegant minimalism that spoke of real success. Michael sat at the end of the long table, pen in hand, looking at the acquisition documents that would dissolve Nichols Consulting into Rivera Consulting Group. Tom sat beside him, already having signed. Across from them, Misty's attorney reviewed the terms one final time. "Mr. Nichols, once you sign, all assets, contracts and client relationships transfer to Rivera Consulting Group. Your staff will become RCG employees with immediate salary increases and full benefits. All outstanding business debts will be absorbed by RCG. You and Mr. Warren will each receive a settlement payment and a non-compete agreement spanning 2 years and 50 miles. Michael's hand hovered over the signature line. "Where's Misty?" "Ms. Rivera felt it would be more comfortable for all parties if she wasn't present for the signing," the attorney said smoothly. "She's currently meeting with your former staff to welcome them to their new positions." Of course she was. Even in victory, Misty was gracious enough to spare him the humiliation of watching her win. Michael signed. The pen felt heavy, like he was signing away more than a business. He was signing away the illusion that he'd ever been capable of success without her. "Congratulations, gentlemen. The transaction is complete." The attorney gathered the papers. "Your former employees are being welcomed in the main conference room if you'd like to say goodbye." Tom stood immediately. Michael followed more slowly, dreading what came next. The main conference room was filled with people Michael had worked with for years. Sarah from accounting, David from business development, 3 junior consultants whose names he'd never bothered to learn. They were drinking champagne, laughing, looking genuinely happy. Misty stood at the center of the group, elegant in a cream-colored suit, speaking to each person individually. As Michael watched, she shook hands with David. "I know this transition has been stressful," she was saying, "but I want you to know that your expertise and hard work are valued here. You're not just being absorbed into a larger firm, you're joining a team that will recognize and reward your contributions." David's relief was visible. "Thank you, Ms. Rivera. I was worried we'd all end up unemployed." "Not on my watch," Misty smiled. "You built relationships with clients. You delivered quality work. Why would I let that talent go to waste because of someone else's mistakes?" She didn't look at Michael, but everyone in the room knew who she meant. Tom approached the group and was welcomed with handshakes and grateful comments. Michael stood by the door, suddenly an outsider in a room full of people he used to employ. Sarah saw him and approached hesitantly. "Mr. Nichols, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I know this wasn't easy for you." "You should be thanking her," Michael said, gesturing toward Misty. "She's the one who saved your jobs." "I know, I did thank her, but you gave me my first chance in this industry. That matters too." Sarah touched his arm briefly. "I hope things work out for you." She walked away and Michael felt the finality of it. These people had been his responsibility, his team. Now they were Misty's, and they were better off for it. He was about to leave when Misty's voice stopped him. "Michael, a moment?" She gestured toward a small office off the main conference room. He followed her in. She closed the door, and they were alone for the first time since the gala 2 months ago. "I wanted to make sure you understood the terms," she began, all business. "The 2-year non-compete means you can't work in corporate consulting within 50 miles of the city. If you want to start fresh somewhere else, that's your choice. But here, you'll need to find a different industry." "I understand." "Good." She leaned against the desk, studying him. "You look terrible, by the way. Are you eating?" The question, coming from her after everything, caught him off guard. "Why do you care?" "I don't know." She crossed her arms. "Old habits, I guess. I spent 8 years making sure you took care of yourself. Hard to turn that off completely." "You should try harder." "Probably." She was quiet for a moment. "Alexander asked me to move in with him." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "What did you say?" "I said I needed time to think about it. He's patient, understanding. Everything I—" She stopped herself. "He's good to me. You deserve someone who's good to you." "I do, which is why I'm probably going to say yes." She pushed off the desk. I'm telling you this because I don't want you harboring any illusions. What we had is over. What I'm building with Alexander is real, and I need you to accept that and move on. I have moved on. I signed away my company. What more do you want? I want you to stop looking at me like I'm the one who destroyed your life." Her voice rose slightly, the first crack in her professional composure. "You did this, Michael. You took my love, my support, my work, and you threw it back in my face. You told me I wasn't remarkable enough. So I proved I was remarkable enough for everyone except you. Don't you dare make me feel guilty for surviving what you did to me. I'm not—" "Yes, you are. Every time you look at me, I see it. The wounded victim, the betrayed husband, like I'm the villain in your story." She stepped closer. "But I'm not the villain. I'm the person who escaped, and you're the person I escaped from." The words hung between them, brutal and honest. "I am sorry," Michael said quietly. "For what it's worth, I am so sorry." "It's worth nothing, because sorry doesn't change what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent building you up while you tore me down. Sorry is just a word you say when you've run out of excuses." She walked to the door, then paused. "But I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do, because watching you self-destruct isn't as satisfying as I thought it would be." She left. Michael stood alone in the small office, surrounded by the success she'd built, the empire that should have been theirs but was now only hers. He left Rivera Consulting Group through a side exit, avoiding the celebration. His car, a 3-year-old sedan he'd been driving since selling his luxury vehicle, sat alone in the visitor parking. His phone buzzed. His mother. "How did it go?" "It's done. The company's gone." "And how are you?" "I'm unemployed, broke, and my ex-wife is moving in with someone who treats her better than I ever did. How do you think I am?" His mother was quiet for a moment. "I think you're finally feeling the consequences of your choices, and I think that's the first step toward becoming the man you should have been all along." "What if it's too late?" "Too late for what? For Misty? Yes, probably. She's moved on. But too late for you? Michael, you're still breathing. That means you still have time to become someone better. The question is whether you'll actually do the work or just wallow in self-pity." After hanging up, Michael drove to a coffee shop he'd never been to before, somewhere without memories, without history. He bought coffee he couldn't really afford and sat by the window with his laptop. He opened a blank document and started typing. Not a business plan, not a strategy, just truth. "My name is Michael Nichols. I destroyed my marriage by taking my wife for granted. I destroyed my business by building it on borrowed credibility. I destroyed my reputation by being too arrogant to see that success was never about me. It was about the people who believed in me." He wrote for 3 hours. Every mistake, every moment of selfishness, every time he'd chosen his ego over her heart. When he finished, he had 15 pages of brutal honesty that no one would ever read. But writing it mattered. Seeing it all laid out, undeniable, mattered. His phone buzzed with an alert, a LinkedIn notification. Misty had updated her status. "Excited to announce a new partnership with Bennett Strategic Consulting. Together, we're building something extraordinary." The comments were already flooding in. "Congratulations. Well-deserved, power couple." The city's business community was celebrating her success while he sat alone in a coffee shop, drinking cold coffee, facing the ruins of everything he'd thought he was. That night, Michael went to a job placement agency. The counselor looked at his resume with sympathy. "Mr. Nichols, your experience is impressive, but your non-compete agreement limits your options significantly, and frankly, your recent situation has made you a difficult hire in this industry." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying if you want to work, you need to start over. Different field, different city, or different expectations about the level you'll be starting at." She leaned forward kindly. "Have you considered taking some time to figure out who you are outside of your career? Because right now, you seem like someone who defined himself entirely by a success you didn't actually earn, and that's a shaky foundation for any future. Michael left the agency and drove nowhere in particular. He ended up at the park where he and Misty used to walk on Sunday mornings, back when they were happy, back before he'd forgotten to appreciate what he had. He sat on their bench. He still thought of it that way, and watched couples walk past. Young lovers holding hands, older couples walking in comfortable silence, all of them doing what he'd failed to do, choosing each other day after day, moment after moment. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Nichols, this is Jennifer Park from Westside Family Services. I understand you're between positions right now. How did you—" "Your ex-wife called. She said you might be interested in consulting work for non-profits. The pay is minimal, a fraction of what you're used to, but it's honest work helping organizations that actually need support. Would you be interested in a conversation?" Misty had made a call for him. Even now, even after everything. "Yes," Michael heard himself say. "I'd be very interested." After hanging up, he sat on the bench as the sun set and let himself cry for the first time since Misty left. Not because he'd lost his company, not because he'd lost his reputation, because he'd finally lost the delusion that he deserved better than what he'd given. And maybe, that was the first honest moment he'd had in years. The sun set completely. The park emptied. Michael sat alone in the dark and thought about what it meant to start over. Not as Michael Nichols, successful consultant, but as Michael Nichols, man who'd destroyed something beautiful and now had to learn how to build something real. It wasn't redemption, but it might be the beginning of understanding what redemption would cost. And for the first time in 6 months, that felt like progress. Chapter 7. The Transformation. 8 months after Misty left, Michael Nichols discovered that humility tasted like stale coffee in a non-profit office where the heat barely worked and nobody knew his name. Westside Family Services occupied the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned 20 years ago. The elevator groaned with every trip, the fluorescent lights flickered constantly, and Michael's office was actually a desk in the corner of a shared workspace where 3 other people typed, talked, and existed in his peripheral vision. It was the opposite of everything he'd built, and somehow it was exactly what he needed. "Michael, can you take a look at this grant proposal?" Yolanda Martinez dropped a thick folder on his desk. She was the executive director, a 60-year-old woman who'd spent 40 years helping families in crisis and had exactly 0 patience for ego or excuses. "Sure, what's the deadline?" "Tomorrow. I know it's tight, but our grant writer quit last week and we're desperate." She studied him over her reading glasses. "You worked with the Morrison Foundation before, right? When you had your fancy consulting firm?" "I did." "Think you can translate non-profit speak into something they'll actually fund?" Michael opened the folder. The proposal was well-intentioned but poorly written, full of jargon and lacking the concrete outcomes that foundations demanded. In his old life, he would have had an assistant polish this. Now he was the assistant. "I'll have it ready by morning." Yolanda's expression softened slightly. "You know, when Misty Rivera called and said you might be interested in working here, I almost said no. I looked up what happened between you two. Wasn't impressed." Michael's face burned. "Why did you say yes?" "Because she told me something interesting. She said, 'He's not the man I married anymore. I'm not sure who he's becoming, but I think it might be someone worth knowing.' High praise from a woman whose life you wrecked." Yolanda turned to leave, then looked back. "Don't make her wrong about you." Michael worked on the grant proposal until midnight. Then he drove to his small apartment, a studio in a building where the elevator also didn't work, and collapsed on the second-hand couch he'd bought for $300. This was his life now. Non-profit work that paid barely enough to cover rent, a car with 200,000 miles, dinners that came from the grocery store's discount section, no staff, no reputation, no illusions. And somehow he was less miserable than he'd been in months. The next morning he submitted the grant proposal to Yolanda, who read it at her desk while he waited nervously. "This is good," she finally said. "Really good. You made our work sound important without being pretentious. That's rare. I just told the truth about what you do. That's the part you were always missing before, isn't it? The truth." She handed him another folder. "We've got a family shelter that needs restructuring, single moms trying to get back on their feet. Think you can help them build sustainable budgets and life plans?" "I can try. Try hard. These women have been beaten down by life. They don't need someone who talks a big game. They need someone who'll actually show up and do the work." Michael spent the next 2 weeks at the shelter, meeting with women who were rebuilding their lives from nothing, single mothers who'd left abusive relationships, women who'd lost everything to addiction and were fighting their way back to their children. Each story was a mirror reflecting his own destruction in different light. One woman, Teresa, was 32 with 2 kids. She'd been married to a man who controlled every dollar, every decision, every moment of her life. "He used to tell me I was stupid," she said during their budget meeting, "that I'd never make it without him, that I should be grateful he stayed with me." Michael's chest tightened. "What made you leave?" "My daughter. She started apologizing for taking up space, and I realized she was learning from watching me disappear. I couldn't let her think that was normal." Teresa looked at him directly. "You ever make someone feel small?" "Yes." "You ever apologize?" "I tried. She wouldn't accept it." "Then your apology wasn't for her. It was for you. Real apologies require the other person to forgive you, and nobody owes you that. You just have to sit with what you did and learn to be better." Teresa returned to her budget worksheet. "Anyway, that's what my therapist says." After the meeting, Michael sat in his car and called the one person who might still answer. Derek picked up on the 3rd ring. "Michael, how is she, really?" A long pause. "She's good, really good. Her company's thriving. She and Alexander are... I don't want to know about him. I want to know if she's happy." "She seems happy. She laughs more. She doesn't have that tightness around her eyes she used to get when you dismiss something she said." Derek's voice softened. "But sometimes, late at night when we're working on projects, I catch her looking sad. And I think she's grieving what you two could have been if you'd just treated her right from the start." "Does she ever ask about me?" "Every time I see her. She asks if you're okay, if you're working, if you have people around you. She cares, Michael. She just can't afford to care too much." That night, Michael did something impulsive. He went to the bookstore and found a journal. Nothing fancy, just a simple notebook. He started writing in it. Not for Misty to read, for himself, to document the man he'd been and the man he was trying to become. Month 8, I met Teresa today. She reminded me that some people break you down because they're afraid of how bright you might shine if they let you. I did that to Misty. I see that now. Every time she had an idea I felt threatened by, every time her success made me uncomfortable, I found small ways to diminish her. Death by 1,000 cuts. And I told myself it was love, it was guidance, it was helping. But it was control, it was fear, it was me trying to keep someone remarkable small enough to fit my ego. 3 weeks later, Michael ran into Misty at a coffee shop. He almost didn't see her. She was tucked in a corner booth, laptop open, completely focused on her work. She wore glasses he'd never seen before and had her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger somehow, less burdened. He should have left, should have ordered his coffee to go and disappeared before she noticed him. But his feet carried him forward before his brain caught up. "Misty." She looked up, startled. For a fraction of a second, her face softened. Then the professional mask slipped back into place. "Michael, hi. I don't want to interrupt. I wanted to say thank you for the referral to Westside Family Services." "Oh, you're welcome. Are you doing okay there?" "I'm working harder than I ever worked at my own company, making 1/10 of the money and helping people who actually need it. So yeah, I'm doing okay." He shifted his weight awkwardly. "How are you?" "Busy. Good. We just landed a major contract with the city." "I saw. Congratulations. They stood in silence, years of history and hurt hanging between them like fog. I should let you work, Michael said finally. I just wanted to say thank you, and that you look happy. I'm glad. He turned to leave. Michael. He stopped. Are you eating? Taking care of yourself? The question, so familiar, so achingly reminiscent of their marriage, made his throat tight. Yeah. I'm learning how to cook. It's not great, but I'm not starving. A small smile flickered across her face. That's good, I worried about that. You shouldn't worry about me anymore. I know, but old habits. She closed her laptop. Sit. Just for a minute. He sat across from her, this woman he'd loved and lost, in a coffee shop that smelled like burnt espresso and second chances. The work you're doing at Westside, she said. Yolanda told me you're good at it, that you actually listen to people instead of just telling them what to do. I'm learning, slowly. That's more than most people manage, she studied him carefully. You look different, tired but different. I'm broke, humbled, and starting from zero, but I'm learning what actually matters and who I actually am when I'm not performing for people. He met her eyes. I'm learning what you tried to teach me for 8 years. I'm just sorry it took losing you to figure it out. Misty's expression flickered. Pain, recognition, something softer. Michael. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face changed. I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's Alexander. She answered the call, her voice warm. Hi, yes, I'm still at the coffee shop. 15 minutes? Okay, see you soon. She hung up and looked at Michael with something like apology. He's picking me up. We have dinner reservations. Of course. I should go anyway. Michael stood. Thank you for the minute, and for everything you did, even the parts where you destroyed me. I needed it. I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped catching you when you fell. That's what I meant. He smiled sadly. For what it's worth, he seems like a good man. Alexander, you deserve someone who treats you right. He does treat me right. He makes me laugh. He celebrates my success. He never makes me feel small. She gathered her things. He's everything you should have been. The words were a knife, but Michael nodded. Good. That's good. You deserve that. He left before Alexander arrived, before he had to watch them drive away together, before he had to witness the life Misty was building without him. In his car, he sat in the parking lot and pulled out his journal. Month 8 continued. I saw her today. She looks happy with him, and it doesn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Maybe because I'm starting to understand that her happiness was never about me. Her happiness is hers. I just happened to be there for some of it, and then I happened to ruin it. But she rebuilt without me. And that's not a tragedy. That's justice. That's what remarkable people do. They survive the people who try to dim their light. He drove home to his small apartment, heated up leftover soup, and ate alone while working on a proposal for Westside's next project. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the life he'd imagined. But it was honest. And maybe honest was what he should have been aiming for all along. Chapter 8. The Crisis. 9 months after Misty left, Michael's past came back like a debt collector demanding payment, and this time the bill wasn't just his to pay. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while Michael was reviewing budget proposals for a women's shelter. Subject line, legal notice, breach of contract. Michael opened it with the vague dread of someone who'd gotten used to bad news. What he found was worse than he expected. Beaumont Industries, a corporation Michael had done business with 3 years ago when he still had a company, was claiming breach of contract. According to their legal team, Michael had signed a performance guarantee clause that held him personally liable if any ethical violations or misrepresentations occurred during the contract period. Michael read the document twice, his stomach sinking with each word. The contract claimed that Michael had misrepresented his company's capabilities, had failed to disclose that much of the strategic work was being done by uncredited third parties, and had violated ethical standards by presenting others' ideas as his own. All of it was true, every word. Misty had done most of the strategic work on that Beaumont contract. Michael had presented it as his own, and now, 3 years later, Beaumont was using that as leverage. But the truly devastating part came at the end of the legal notice. Due to the ethical violations described above, all contracts associated with the original Beaumont agreement are hereby nullified unless the following conditions are met. 1. Full repayment of fees paid to Nichols Consulting during the contract period, $2.3 million, or 2. Personal surety and financial guarantee signed by all parties who benefited from the contract, including Mrs. Misty Rivera Nichols. Michael's hands shook as he read the final paragraph. Mrs. Rivera's acquisition of Nichols Consulting assets includes assumption of all associated contracts and obligations. Unless Mrs. Rivera provides personal surety guaranteeing Mr. Nichols' ethical conduct and financial stability, all contracts will be nullified and Rivera Consulting Group will forfeit all assets acquired from Nichols Consulting. You have 14 days to comply. It was blackmail, dressed up as legal action, and it was brilliant in its cruelty. Beaumont didn't actually care about ethics violations from 3 years ago. They cared that Misty had recently refused to work with them after Michael exposed their insider trading practices. This was retaliation, and they'd weaponized Michael's past mistakes to force Misty into an impossible choice: sign her name guaranteeing his integrity or lose everything she'd built by acquiring his company. Michael called Tom immediately. "Did you see it?" "I'm looking at it now." Tom's voice was grim. "This is bad, Michael. This affects everyone who used to work for us. If Misty doesn't sign, she loses the acquisition. All those employees we transferred to her, they'll be caught in the legal crossfire." "Can Beaumont actually do this? With the right lawyers?" "Probably. That performance guarantee you signed was unusual, but it's enforceable. And the clause about all parties who benefited could absolutely be interpreted to include Misty, especially since she acquired the company and its contracts." Michael's mind raced. "I need to talk to her." "She's not going to want to hear from you." "I don't care. I created this mess. I need to fix it." He tried calling Misty's office. Her assistant was polite but firm. "Ms. Rivera is not taking calls regarding this matter. All inquiries should go through her legal team." He tried emailing. The message bounced back with an auto-reply. "This email address does not accept correspondence from your domain." He even tried going to her office building. Security stopped him in the lobby. "I'm sorry, sir. Ms. Rivera has left instructions that you're not permitted in the building." Michael stood in the lobby, watching people move through their successful lives, and felt the weight of his past mistakes crushing him. Everything he'd done, every lie, every stolen idea, every moment of taking credit for Misty's work was now being used as a weapon against her. That night, he sat in his apartment with the legal documents spread across his second-hand coffee table and tried to find a way out. There wasn't one. Beaumont had structured this perfectly. Unless Misty signed the surety agreement, promising to vouch for Michael's character and guarantee his financial stability, the acquisition would collapse. She would lose millions of dollars. Her employees, the people she'd saved from his failure, would be caught in legal battles. Her reputation would suffer, all because she'd been generous enough to acquire his dying company. Michael's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Alexander Bennett. We need to talk. Meet me at Greystone Bar in 1 hour. Come alone." Michael's stomach knotted, but he went. Alexander was already there, sitting in a back booth with a whiskey in front of him. He looked older than at the gala, tired in a way that suggested he'd been having difficult conversations. "Mr. Nichols, sit." Michael sat. "I'm going to be direct," Alexander began. "The Beaumont situation threatens everything Misty has built. Her lawyers are reviewing options, but the consensus is that your performance guarantee is enforceable. She has two choices: sign the surety agreement or abandon the acquisition and fight Beaumont in court for years. I never meant for this to happen. Of course you didn't. You never meant for any of it. But intentions don't matter. Consequences do. Alexander leaned forward. Misty is refusing to sign. She says she won't put her entire company at risk by vouching for your integrity when you spent years proving you had none. The words landed like blows. Her board is pressuring her to sign. Her investors are panicking, and she's sitting in her office right now trying to figure out how to save 20 people's jobs without destroying everything she's built. Alexander's voice hardened. This is your fault, your lies, your shortcuts, your pathetic need to take credit for her work, and now she's the one who has to pay for it. What do you want from me? I want you to disappear. I want you to go to Beaumont and offer them whatever they want. Full repayment, your house, your future earnings, whatever, so that Misty doesn't have to risk anything for you ever again. I have nothing. I can't pay them back. Then you're useless, as usual. Alexander drained his whiskey. Stay away from her. Don't try to contact her. Don't try to fix this. You've done enough damage. He stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I see what she saw in you once. There's a decent man somewhere in there, but he's buried under so much ego and cowardice that I'm not sure he'll ever claw his way out. He left. Michael sat alone in the bar, Alexander's words echoing in his head. Over the next week, Michael tried everything. Attempt 1. He contacted Beaumont directly, offering to take full responsibility and work out a repayment plan. Their response was cold. We require surety from Mrs. Rivera, or we proceed with contract nullification. Your personal repayment offer is insufficient. Attempt 2. He approached Misty's investors, explaining the situation and offering to sign documents absolving Misty of any liability. They were sympathetic, but clear. The legal structure doesn't work that way. If she doesn't sign, we pull our funding. We can't risk exposure. Attempt 3. He contacted former colleagues, trying to gather evidence that the Beaumont contract had been fulfilled satisfactorily, that there were no actual damages. Most didn't return his calls. Those who did were blunt. We can't testify for you. It would hurt our careers. Attempt 4. 7 days before the deadline, Michael waited outside Misty's office building for 6 hours in the rain. When she finally emerged at 8 p.m., escorted by security, he fell to his knees on the wet sidewalk. Please, not for me. For them. For the people whose lives depend on this. Misty stopped. Security tensed, but she raised a hand. She looked down at Michael, kneeling in the rain, and her expression was a complicated mix of anger, pain, and something that might have been pity. Get up. Not until you hear me. Get up. Her voice shook. You don't get to make me the villain here. I didn't create this mess. You did. Every choice you made, every time you took credit for my work, every moment you chose ego over integrity. This is the bill coming due, and I won't pay it for you. I'm not asking you to pay it for me. I'm asking you to save people who don't deserve to suffer because I was a terrible person. Those people will be fine. I'll find other ways to help them. But I will not sign my name to a document that says I trust you. I will not risk my entire company on your character when you spent years proving you had none. She turned away. Go home, Michael. Find another way, because I'm done saving you. Security escorted her to her car. Michael knelt on the sidewalk in the rain until they were gone, until there was no one left to witness his complete failure. Attempt 5. With 3 days left, Michael went to Misty's father. Mr. Rivera's office was everything Michael's used to be: mahogany furniture, original art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man himself was distinguished, powerful, and looking at Michael with open contempt. You have 60 seconds before I have security remove you. Your daughter is about to lose everything because of mistakes I made. There has to be something. There is something. She could sign the surety agreement. She could vouch for your integrity and risk her entire company on the possibility that you've changed. Mr. Rivera stood. But she won't. Do you know why? Michael shook his head. Because you broke her trust so completely that she'd rather lose millions than risk believing in you again. That's what you did, Mr. Nichols. You didn't just destroy your marriage, you destroyed her ability to take anyone at their word. His voice dropped. My daughter loved you with everything she had. She sacrificed her career, her ambitions, her sense of self to build you up, and you thanked her by humiliating her. I know, I'm trying to fix it. You can't fix it. Some things once broken, stay broken. Now get out of my office before I forget my daughter loved you once and do something I'll regret. Michael left, walked through the city as the sun set, found himself at the park where he and Misty used to walk, sitting on their bench, watching people live their uncomplicated lives. His phone rang. Misty. His heart stopped. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., my office. Bring every document related to the Beaumont contract. And Michael. Yes? Bring the truth, all of it. No performances, no speeches, just truth. Because I need to decide if you're worth risking everything I've built. She hung up before he could respond. Michael sat on the bench as night fell and prepared for the most important meeting of his life. Not to save his company, that was long gone. Not to save his reputation, that was already destroyed. But to save the people caught in the crossfire of his mistakes. And maybe if he could find enough truth inside himself to show Misty that somewhere underneath all the ego and fear, there had once been a man worth believing in, even if it was too late for anything but honesty. Chapter 9. The Siege. 9 months and 12 days after Misty left, Michael Nichols walked into her office to confess every sin he'd committed in their marriage, and discovered that truth was more painful than any lie he'd ever told. The conference room at Rivera Consulting Group was cold, sterile, and filled with people who had every reason to hate him. Misty sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 attorneys, a forensic accountant, and a private investigator whose job, apparently, was to verify every claim Michael made. Sit, Misty said. Her voice was professional, detached. The voice of a CEO managing a crisis rather than a woman confronting her ex-husband. Michael sat. He'd brought copies of every document she'd requested, the Beaumont contract, email exchanges, project files, everything that proved his guilt. Before we begin, one of the attorneys said, I want to clarify what's at stake. Ms. Rivera is considering signing a surety agreement that puts her personally and professionally at risk. If you lie, if you omit, if you try to minimize what you did, we will know, and this meeting ends immediately. I understand. The attorney nodded to Misty, who looked at Michael with eyes that had once looked at him with love, and now held only careful assessment. Tell me about the Beaumont contract. All of it. Who did the work? Who took credit? And why you signed a performance guarantee claiming full responsibility? Michael took a breath and began. The Beaumont contract came to me through your father. He introduced me to their CEO at a charity dinner. You weren't at that dinner. You were homesick with flu. But the introduction only happened because your father thought I was someone who valued you, who treated you as an equal partner. He looked at the legal team. I wasn't. I never had been. He pulled out the first document. This is the initial proposal. I presented it as my work. But if you look at the metadata, you'll see it was created on your laptop, Misty. You spent 3 nights working on this while I was out with clients. You wrote 90% of it. I added some language in the executive summary and sent it under my name. The forensic accountant examined the file, nodded confirmation to the legal team. The strategy sessions with Beaumont, there were 6 of them over 2 months. You prepared materials for every meeting. You sat in on 3 of them, offered insights that changed their entire approach. But when Beaumont's CEO praised the work, I accepted the credit. I never once said, my wife developed that strategy. Misty's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened on the table. The performance guarantee. I signed it because Beaumont wanted assurance that I could deliver results. They wanted it personally guaranteed because the contract was substantial. You were at your sister's place that weekend. The weekend after I'd told you that you were being too sensitive about not getting credit for things. You'd asked me to acknowledge your contributions. I'd said you were making it about yourself when it should be about the team. He pulled out another document. This is my signature on the guarantee, promising that I personally stood behind all representations made about our capabilities. It was a lie. I couldn't have delivered those results without you, but I signed anyway because my ego needed to believe I could. The room was silent except for papers rustling as the legal team reviewed evidence. The deliverables Beaumont received, the strategic frameworks, the implementation plans, the quarterly reports, you drafted 85% of them. I know because I kept every version, every edit track, every late-night email where you sent me work at 2 a.m. with notes like, I think this approach might work better, and made some changes to strengthen the argument. He laid out printed emails, dozens of them, each showing Misty's contributions that Michael had presented as his own work. I took your brilliance and I wore it like a costume, and every time someone praised me, every time someone called me innovative or strategic, I felt like I'd earned it. But I hadn't. I'd stolen it from the person who loved me. One of the attorneys spoke. Mr. Nichols, why are you telling us this? You understand this confession could be used against you in multiple legal contexts? Because she asked for the truth, and because lying is what got us here. Michael looked at Misty. You asked me once why I did it, why I took credit for your work. I told you that you were being dramatic, that marriage was a partnership, and it didn't matter who got credit. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he didn't look away from her. But that was a lie too. The truth is, I was terrified. Every day I watched you be smarter than me, more strategic, more capable. And I knew that if people saw how remarkable you were, they'd realize how unremarkable I was. So I took your light and I pretended it was mine, and I convinced myself it was what you wanted, that you were happy supporting me. I was happy, Misty said quietly, until I realized you weren't supporting me back. You were using me. Yes. The private investigator slid a folder across the table to Misty. We've verified everything he's claimed. The metadata on documents, the email timestamps, the witness statements from people who worked with both of you. It's all true. Misty opened the folder, scanned the contents, then closed it carefully. This doesn't solve our problem, one of the attorneys said. Beaumont still requires Ms. Rivera's personal surety. These confessions, while detailed, don't change the legal structure. No, Michael agreed, but she asked for truth, and I owed her that. Misty walked to the window, stood there for a long moment looking out over the city. When she spoke, her back was still to the room. Everyone except Michael, please leave. The legal team exchanged glances. Ms. Rivera, we strongly advise, leave. I'll call you when we're finished. They left. The door closed with a soft click, and Michael and Misty were alone for the first time in months. She turned from the window and her composure cracked. Do you have any idea what you've done? Not to yourself, I don't care about that anymore, but to me, to my company, to the 20 people whose livelihoods depend on this acquisition. Her voice shook. I built something real, Michael, something ethical, something I'm proud of, and your past, your lies, and your theft, and your ego is about to destroy it. I know. You don't know. You can't know, because you've never built anything real. Everything you had was borrowed from people who believed in you, me, my father, our clients. And when that foundation crumbled, you had nothing. But I built this company from the ground up. Me, my work, my reputation. And now I have to decide if I'm willing to risk all of it to save people from the consequences of your mistakes. Don't sign it. She stared at him. What? Don't sign the surety agreement. Let the acquisition fail. Find another way to help those employees. But don't risk everything you've built for me. I'm not worth it. I never was. That's not your choice to make. No, but it's the truth. Michael stood. You've asked me for truth today, so here's the final piece. Watching you build this empire has been the most painful and most important thing I've experienced. Because it showed me what you could have been if you hadn't been tied to me. You didn't need me to be remarkable. You always were. I just spent 8 years making you feel like you weren't. Misty's eyes filled with tears. So don't sign. Let me face the consequences alone. Let Beaumont come after me. Let me spend the rest of my life repaying what I owe. But don't attach your name to mine ever again. You've earned the right to be free of me. Michael, there's one more thing. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I wrote this 6 months ago and never sent it. It's a letter to Beaumont, taking full responsibility for all misrepresentations, acknowledging that you were the primary contributor to the work, and offering to face legal consequences alone. It doesn't solve your problem, but it might help if you have to fight them in court. He placed the letter on the table and walked to the door. Where are you going? To let you make this decision without me trying to influence it. Whatever you choose, I'll accept it. If you sign, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth that trust. If you don't, I'll face Beaumont alone and do everything I can to minimize the damage to you. He opened the door. Michael, wait. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Why now? Why confess everything now? Because you asked for truth, and because I finally learned that you deserved it 8 years ago. He looked back at her. I'm sorry it took losing you to understand what having you meant. He left the office, walked past the legal team waiting in the hallway, took the elevator down, and walked out into the afternoon sunlight. His phone rang 2 hours later. Misty. I need 48 hours to think. Don't contact me. Don't try to help. Just wait. Okay. And Michael? Thank you. For the truth. Even if it's too late. She hung up. For 2 days, Michael existed in limbo. He went to work at Westside Family Services. He helped Teresa revise her budget. He wrote grant proposals. He lived his small, honest life and waited for Misty to decide whether he deserved a miracle he hadn't earned. On the second evening, his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Nichols, this is Margaret Reeves, lead counsel for Rivera Consulting Group. Ms. Rivera has signed the surety agreement under specific conditions. She needs to see you immediately. How quickly can you get to her office? Michael's heart pounded. 20 minutes. Make it 15, and Mr. Nichols, don't make her regret this. He made it in 12. Misty was in her office, the signed surety agreement on her desk. She looked exhausted, older than her 32 years, like someone who'd just made a decision that might destroy her. I signed it, she said without preamble. Not because I trust you, because I couldn't let 20 innocent people suffer for your mistakes. Misty, but there are conditions. You will work with my legal team to provide everything they need to fight Beaumont if this goes to court. You will make yourself available at any hour for any question. You will cooperate fully. She looked at him directly. And you will never, ever contact me again unless I initiate it. Do you understand? Yes. This isn't forgiveness, Michael. This isn't a second chance. This is me doing what I always did, cleaning up your mess so other people don't get hurt. But this is the last time. After this, you're on your own. I understand. She looked down at the signed document, then back at him. I hope you're worth this risk. For their sake. Because if you're not, if you let them down the way you let me down, I will never forgive myself for believing you could change. I won't let them down. We'll see. She stood. My attorneys will be in touch. Now please leave. Michael left her office knowing that she'd saved him one final time, not because she wanted to, but because saving people from the consequences of his mistakes was who she was. And that made his redemption, if it even existed, not about earning her back, but about becoming worthy of the sacrifice she'd just made, even if she'd never know it, even if she'd never care. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. 10 months after Misty Rivera left her husband, she sat in her office at 3 in the morning, staring at the signed surety agreement that had either saved 20 lives or destroyed her company, and wondered if Michael Nichols deserved what she was about to do. The Beaumont situation had ended not with a whimper, but with a panicked surrender. When Misty's legal team filed their countersuit, they'd attached a single exhibit, Michael's sworn confession letter, the one he'd written 6 months ago and handed to Misty in Chapter 9. But it wasn't just an apology. It was a detailed, time-stamped account of everything. Every conversation where Beaumont's executives had specifically requested that Misty's contributions remain uncredited so they could claim they were working exclusively with Michael Nichols, the industry leader. Every email where they'd acknowledged her strategic work but insisted the invoices only show his name because their board preferred working with male consultants. Every meeting where they'd pressured Michael to sign that performance guarantee, knowing full well the work was being done by someone else because it gave them leverage. Michael's confession hadn't just admitted his own lies. It had exposed Beaumont's complicity in those lies, their active participation in creating a fraudulent business relationship that they were now trying to weaponize. The legal term was unclean hands. You can't sue someone for fraud when you knowingly participated in and benefited from that same fraud. Beaumont's attorneys had read Michael's 43-page sworn statement, every detail corroborated with emails, meeting notes and documentation, and realized they'd walked into a trap of their own making. If they pushed forward with their lawsuit, Michael's testimony would expose not just his ethical violations, but theirs, their gender discrimination practices, their deliberate exploitation of uncredited labor, their attempt to use fabricated leverage for corporate retaliation. They'd dropped the lawsuit within 2 hours of receiving the filing. No negotiation, no settlement, just immediate withdrawal with a terse statement about resolving misunderstandings. The surety agreement Misty had signed, the one that had kept her awake for nights, would never be tested, because Michael's truth had become the weapon that destroyed the lie he'd created. His lying had built the vulnerability, his honesty had eliminated it. But sitting here in the dark, looking at the document that proved she'd bet her entire empire on Michael's character, Misty felt something crack open inside her chest. She'd told herself she signed for the employees, for justice, for principle. But that was only part of the truth. She'd also signed because 3 months of watching Michael transform himself, the reports from Yolanda at Westside, the testimony from people he'd helped, the quiet, persistent way he'd shown up and done the work without fanfare or credit, had made her wonder if, maybe, just maybe, he'd finally become the man she'd hoped he could be. And that terrified her. Her phone buzzed. Alexander. You're still at the office, aren't you? How did you know? Because you've been there every night this week. Misty, the Beaumont situation is over. You can come home. A pause. To my place, where you've been staying. I know. I just need to finish some things. No. You're avoiding me because you know we need to have a conversation you don't want to have. His voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. I'm coming to your office. Don't leave. He hung up before she could respond. 20 minutes later, Alexander walked into her office. He looked tired, frustrated, and done with waiting. I've been patient, he said, not sitting down. I've been understanding. I've watched you stare at that signed surety agreement like it's a love letter instead of a legal document. I've watched you check your phone every time Michael's name comes up. I've watched you go through the motions of being with me while your heart is somewhere else. Alexander, that's not— Don't. He held up a hand. Don't lie to me. I've earned more than that. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you one question, and you're going to answer it honestly. Can you do that? She nodded, throat tight. If Michael Nichols walked through that door right now and asked you to give him another chance, not as business partners, not as friends, but as the man you might love again, would you say yes? Misty opened her mouth, closed it. The silence stretched. That's what I thought. Alexander's laugh was bitter. You know what the worst part is? He has changed. I hate it, but he has. I've watched him these past months. The work he's doing, the way he shows up, the genuine transformation. And if I'm being honest, he's becoming the man you deserved all along. Alexander. But I'm not going to sit here and be the consolation prize while you watch him continue his redemption arc. I'm not going to be the safe choice you settle for because you're too scared to risk your heart on him again. He moved toward the door. I asked you to move in with me 2 months ago. You said you needed time. But time wasn't going to change anything, was it? Because you were never really with me. You were just waiting to see if he'd become worth the risk. That's not fair, isn't it? He turned back, his eyes sad but certain. Misty, you're an incredible woman. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel alive, not safe. And I think, God help me, I think that person might be him. If he's really changed, if he's really become who you need him to be. You're a good man, Alexander. I know. That's why I'm walking away instead of making you choose, because you'd probably choose me out of guilt or fear or practicality, and I deserve better than that. We both do. He opened the door. When you figure out what you really want, I hope it makes you happy, even if it's not me. He left. Misty sat in her office, surrounded by the empire she'd built, and admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She wasn't over Michael. Worse, she wasn't sure she wanted to be. She picked up her phone and did something she'd forbidden herself to do for 10 months. She called him. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with sleep. Misty, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. I needed to hear your voice. Silence. Then, it's 3 a.m. I know, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called. No, don't hang up, please. I'll stay on as long as you need. She could hear him moving, imagined him sitting up in whatever small apartment he lived in now, trying to wake up fully. I signed the surety agreement, she said. I know. Your attorney called me. Misty, thank you. Those people, I didn't do it for them, not entirely. The words came out before she could stop them. I did it because somewhere in the past 3 months, I started believing you'd actually changed, and that scares me more than anything. Why? Because I don't trust myself around you anymore. I spent 8 years making excuses for you, seeing the best in you even when you didn't deserve it. What if I'm doing it again? What if you're just performing again and I'm too stupid to see it? You're not stupid. You've never been stupid. You're just someone who sees potential in people. His voice was quiet. And maybe I'm finally living up to some of it. Or maybe I'm just lonely and Alexander is wonderful but safe and you're the disaster I can't quite let go of. Is that what I am? A disaster you can't let go of? I don't know what you are anymore. You're not the man I married. You're not the man I divorced. You're someone new and I don't know if I can trust that person. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Misty, I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just trying to become someone who deserves to exist in the same world as you, even if I never get to be in your life again. What if I want you in my life again? She heard his breath catch. What if I can't stop thinking about you? She continued. What if I lie awake at night wondering if I gave up on us too soon? What if watching you change has made me realize that maybe, we could have had something real if you'd just been this person from the start? Misty, but I'm also terrified, because I built this empire by walking away from you, and if I let you back in even a little, what does that say about everything I've fought for? It says you're human. It says you loved someone who hurt you, and you're trying to figure out if he's hurt you too much to ever forgive. Tears slid down her face. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I want to try. Then don't. Keep building your empire. Keep seeing Alexander. Keep being the remarkable woman you've always been. And let me be the man who learned everything too late. That's okay. I've made peace with it. Have you? No, but I'm trying. She wiped her tears. I have to go. Okay. Michael. Yeah? Come to my office tomorrow, 6 p.m. I want to talk. Really talk. Not about business. About us. About what happened, and whether there's anything left worth saving. Are you sure? No, but I need to know. And I think you do too. The next evening, Michael arrived at her office at exactly 6 p.m., holding 2 cups of coffee from the place they used to go together, back when they were happy. Misty opened the door, saw the coffee, and felt something inside her chest twist. You remembered. I remember everything, that's the problem. They sat in her office, not at the formal conference table, but in the casual seating area by the window as the city glowed below them. "I've been seeing someone," Misty began. "Alexander, you met him." "I know. He's wonderful, successful, respectful, everything I thought I wanted. But he's not you, and I hate that. I hate that after everything you did, I still compare everyone to you. I still wonder what you would say about things. I still catch myself wanting to tell you when something good happens." Michael set down his coffee cup carefully. "Misty, I destroyed us. I don't get to be the person you share good news with anymore. I know that intellectually, but emotionally?" She looked at him. "I'm still in love with you, even though I shouldn't be, even though it's probably self-destructive, even though I built an entire empire to prove I didn't need you. You don't need me. No, but maybe I want you, and those are different things." She turned to face him fully. "I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest. Not the version of honest where you tell me what I want to hear. Real honesty." "Okay. If I gave you a second chance, and I'm not saying I am, would you be the man I need you to be? Or would you eventually fall back into old patterns?" Michael thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know," he said finally. "I want to say yes. I want to promise I've changed forever. But the truth is I'm still learning. I still catch myself taking credit for things. I still feel jealous when people praise others instead of me. The difference is now I recognize it and correct it. But the impulse is still there." Misty nodded slowly. "Thank you for that honesty. But Misty, I will never ever make you feel small again. That I know, because I've spent 10 months watching you shine without me, and I finally understand that your light doesn't diminish mine. It makes me want to burn brighter too." She stood, walked to the window, looked out over the city she'd conquered. "Alexander asked me to move in with him. He asked 2 months ago. I said I needed time to think." Michael's stomach dropped. "I've been stalling because I knew I needed to have this conversation first. I needed to know if what I felt for you was real or just unfinished business." "And?" She turned back to him. "I told him no this morning. I told him I need more time to figure out my feelings, and it wasn't fair to move forward with him while I'm still emotionally tangled up with you. Misty. But Michael, I need you to understand something. I'm not coming back to you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What I'm offering is the possibility of rebuilding something new, not a reunion, not picking up where we left off, but starting over as two different people who might be able to build something healthy." "What does that look like?" "It looks like you continuing to do the work, the real work, not for me, for yourself. It looks like me taking time to heal, to trust myself again, to figure out if I can actually let you back into my life without losing myself." She took a breath. "And it looks like us being honest, brutally honest, about what we need and what we can offer." "What do you need?" "Time. Space to breathe without you trying to win me back. Proof that this change is permanent, not just a performance to get what you want." She moved closer to him. "I need to know that you value me as an equal, that you celebrate my success instead of feeling threatened by it, that you'll never make me choose between my ambition and your ego again." "I can do that. I am doing that. For 10 months, which is good, but Michael, you did the other thing for 8 years, so I need more time to believe this is real." He nodded. "Whatever you need, however long it takes. I don't know if I can love you the way I used to. That innocent, all-in love, you killed that. What I might be able to offer is something more cautious, more protected, and you have to be okay with that. I'm okay with whatever you can give, even if it's nothing." She studied him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. "Business partners first. I have a project that could use your expertise. It's a restructuring consultation for a family business. The pay is standard contractor rates. You'd be working with my team, not for me. Can you handle that?" He took her hand. "Equal partners. Equal partners. Equal credit. Equal everything." "Then yes." They shook, but neither let go immediately. They stood there, hands clasped, feeling the electricity of connection they'd once had, wondering if it could be rebuilt into something sustainable. "This isn't a promise," Misty said softly. "This is just a possibility," Michael finished. "I know, and that's more than I deserve." She released his hand. "The project starts next week. My assistant will send you details. Show up, do good work, prove you can be trusted, and maybe, we'll see where this goes." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Misty, for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Taking time, protecting yourself, not rushing into anything. You've always been smarter than me. I'm just glad I'm finally smart enough to see it." After he left, Misty stood at her window and watched the city lights flicker in the darkness. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "I meant what I said. I won't be your backup plan, but I hope you find what you're looking for. You deserve to be happy, even if it's not with me." She stared at the text, feeling the finality of it. Alexander wasn't waiting for her. He'd made his choice to walk away with dignity, refusing to be the safe option while her heart chased the dangerous one. He was. Alexander was wonderful, but wonderful and right weren't always the same thing. And maybe she needed to give herself permission to find out if the disaster she'd walked away from could be rebuilt into something real. 18 months later. The grand opening of Nichols Rivera Strategic Partners drew the city's business elite, curious about the collaboration between the woman who'd become an industry powerhouse and the man whose fall from grace had been spectacular. But Misty and Michael didn't care about the spectators. They cared about the foundation they'd spent a year and a half building, carefully, honestly, as true equals. "You ready?" Michael asked, adjusting his tie. "To face a room full of people who watched our marriage explode and are now wondering if we've lost our minds by working together?" "Sure, totally ready." Misty smiled, but he saw the nervousness underneath. "We've done harder things than this." "Have we? You built an empire in 10 months. I rebuilt my entire character. This is just public speaking." She laughed. The real laugh he'd fallen in love with years ago, the one he'd spent their marriage trying to dim and was now working to amplify. "Okay, let's go show them what remarkable actually looks like." They walked out together to address the crowd, not as husband and wife, not even as romantic partners. That was still undefined, still evolving slowly as Misty learned to trust again, and Michael learned to deserve that trust. But as partners, real ones, building something together on mutual respect, shared vision, and the hard-won understanding that success meant both of them shining, not just one. After the speeches and ribbon-cutting, after the press left and the crowds dispersed, Misty and Michael stood alone in their shared office, truly shared, with both names on the door, both desks facing each other, equal in every measurable way. "I have something for you," Michael said, pulling out a small box. "Michael, it's not what you think, just open it." Inside was a simple silver bracelet engraved with 8 words. "You were right. Go find someone more remarkable." Misty's eyes filled with tears. "I kept the note you left that night," Michael explained. "The one where you told me to find someone more remarkable. And I've carried it with me every day for 18 months. Because you were right. I needed to find someone remarkable." He clasped the bracelet on her wrist. "I just didn't realize she'd been there all along. And I had to lose her to understand what remarkable actually means. It means showing up. It means doing the work. It means choosing each other even when it's hard. It means you." Misty touched the bracelet. "This doesn't mean we're—" "I know. We're still figuring out what we are. Business partners, definitely. Friends, maybe. Something more, possibly, if you decide you can trust me with your heart again." He smiled sadly. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm just thanking you for giving me the chance to become someone worthy of standing beside you." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man who'd destroyed her, but the man who'd rebuilt himself from those ruins. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "Scared you'll become that person again. Scared I'm making a mistake, scared this will all fall apart. Then watch me, every day. Watch me be the partner you deserve. Watch me celebrate your success. Watch me give credit where it's due. Watch me choose us over my ego, every single time. His voice softened. And the moment I slip, the moment I make you feel small, you walk away. And this time I won't blame you. I'll thank you for having the strength to protect yourself from me. You won't slip. How do you know? Because I've been watching. For 18 months I've been watching every interaction, every choice, every moment when you could have taken credit or diminished someone, and you haven't. Not once. She stepped closer. That's why I'm still scared, because you've actually changed, and that means I have to risk believing in you again. You don't have to risk anything. We can keep doing this. Business partners, friends, nothing more. I'll be okay with that. Will you? I'll have to be. Because having you in my life in any capacity is more than I ever thought I'd get again. She touched his face gently. I'm not ready to call us something. I'm not ready to define what we are or make promises about the future. But Michael. Yeah? I'm not ready either. Does that make sense? He smiled. The real smile. The unguarded one she remembered from when they first fell in love. It makes perfect sense. So we keep building. This business, this partnership, this fragile, complicated thing between us that might become something real or might stay exactly what it is. And either way we'll be okay. Either way we'll be okay, she agreed. They stood there in their shared office, two people who'd destroyed each other and rebuilt themselves separately, now trying to figure out if they could build something together that didn't require either of them to be small. Misty looked around the space, their names on the wall, their achievements displayed equally, proof that they'd created something real. We're not better together, she said softly. Michael's heart clenched. We're remarkable together, both of us, equally. Finally, he pulled her into a hug, tentative at first, then stronger as she relaxed into it. No kiss, no grand romantic gesture, just two people holding each other, acknowledging the journey they'd been on and the uncertain path ahead. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me the chance to prove I could change. Thank you for actually changing, for becoming the man I hoped you could be. They pulled apart, both smiling through tears. Come on, Misty said, grabbing her coat. Let's go celebrate. Our company just launched. That's worth acknowledging. Where do you want to go? That coffee shop, the one we used to go to. I think it's time to make new memories there. They left the office together, walking side by side through the city that had watched them fall apart and was now watching them, carefully, cautiously, try to build something better. Not a fairy tale reunion, not a perfect ending, just two imperfect people choosing day by day to show up and do the work of being worthy of each other. And maybe that was the most remarkable thing of all. Not the empire they built, but the fact that they built it honestly, equally, with the kind of respect that should have been there from the beginning. The sun set over the city as they walked, and Misty touched the bracelet on her wrist, the one that reminded her she'd been right to walk away. And maybe, just maybe, right to consider walking back. Not because she needed him, but because for the first time in their entire relationship, he'd become someone she could choose without losing herself. And that was worth everything.